The recent synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh shocked the nation, and such crimes are reportedly on the rise. According to data released by the FBI today, hate crimes in the U.S. increased 17% in 2017. It is the third straight year for that trend. In 2017, there were more than 8,400 victims of hate crimes and more than 6,300 known offenders. Compare that to 2016, when there were roughly 7,500 victims and more than 5,700 offenders. Well, marginalized groups here in Louisiana say they are saddened by these numbers, but say they are not surprised.
Lauren Bale spoke with members of a local synagogue targeted by a hate crime. She has their reaction.
It's obviously very upsetting. There's been a lot of news about increases in all kinds of hate crimes, so it's not surprising that the numbers went up.
For Terry Gross, news of a national spike in hate crimes is nothing new. Her synagogue fell victim to anti-Semitic vandalism in September.
Shocking to have something happen like that in the United States.
According to the FBI, hate crime reports rose 17% in 2017. The most common motivations were race, ethnicity, or ancestry, followed by hatred over religion. Louisiana reported 26 incidents last year. The most was in St. Charles Parish, with 10 reported hate crimes. No other parish had more than 2. But not every crime involving race gets classified as a hate crime.
The state law, Louisiana Revised Statute 14, Article 107.2, is pretty clear that the motivating factor has to be hate, not just that there is some sort of words used.
Based on that definition, the recent beating of an African-American man in the French Quarter at the hands of 2 white men did not qualify, even though the men used racial slurs. The NOPD say the beating was sparked over a road rage incident that turned into an attack. The 2 NOPD officers arrested for beating a Hispanic man and using ethnic slurs also did not qualify as a hate crime. The now ex-NOPD officers are facing misdemeanor charges.
What people say to each other, they're freer about saying things that are hurtful and hateful to one another than it used to be. And it's upsetting.
Those who have been victims themselves say hurtful words are turning into violent actions, and something needs to change. Lauren Bale, Eyewitness News.
According to the FBI, hate crimes involving minors has also increased.